All right, hello folks. So I'm going to call this meeting to order at 5:07 p.m. on April 5th, 2024. And then let's do a roll call here. I may need some help with this. I'm in attendance. There's Joey, Aaron, Nick, Alice, and Mia.
That's all of them.
Okay, so I'd like to entertain a motion to approve our agenda.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda this week.
I'll second.
All right, fantastic. Any discussion?
It's a good agenda.
Okay, all in favor? That's unanimous. So let's approve that. Next, let's move on to the minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from last week.
Last 2 weeks.
Sorry, last 2 weeks.
So motioned.
Next second.
Excellent. Any discussion? Thank goodness. Call to order, call to vote. And unanimous again. Okay. So minutes from the last 2 weeks have been approved. Any reports? I don't have any. Joey or Aaron?
Nope, no new reports.
Okay, fantastic. And then a CWU.
Yes. Drag brunch, if you guys are interested, is April 9th. It'll be in Holmes, 5 through 8. It is a $12 fee, but we will be also doing a drag show starting at 6. And additionally, we are also holding elections. If you guys are interested in running for any positions, we have the BLD members positions. We have all 6 going up for election, as well as the senator positions, if you guys are interested. And we are also looking for students within the S&A. So if you guys know anybody that would be interested in, feel free to reach out to them and put them onto the CWU website and have them apply on their committees. We are also looking for members for Council of Probity. So if you guys know anybody that's be willing to participate in either committee, that'd be great. Yeah, I don't have any other updates, so I yield the rest of my time.
Okay, fantastic. After that, let's move on to communications received. Have we received any communications?
No, we have not.
Fantastic. Okay, so with that, let's move on to public comment. This is the first call for public comment. I have a bit of public comment. I'm taking my social studies certification exam tomorrow, the West E, so wish me luck.
Good luck, Xander. You got this.
Thank you. That is all. Okay, any other public comment?
I would like to publicly wish you good luck, Xander.
Thank you. All right, seeing none, let's move on to new business. We have none. So let's move on to our old business, which is our spring quarter meeting schedule. Do we need to vote on that since we didn't have quorum last week?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So I guess I'll let me know if I'm doing this wrong. I'll entertain a motion to officially move our meetings to 5 to 6 p.m. on Fridays.
For the remainder of spring quarter.
For the remainder of spring quarter.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll make the motion, I suppose. Even though I'm the one that started insisting we move it.
I'll second.
Okay, fantastic. Voting? Okay, is that okay? Alice has
2 in
awesome.
favor.
So unanimous. Cool. Then our time is now that. And then I'm not entirely certain what our next bit of old business is. I might need some help with that, but let's move on.
Nope. I will take over for that one, Xander. So I had mentioned this last week to put on people's radars, and I know Mia had sent it out and just put it in the chat again as well. Really what we're going to go through is to do a first kind of run through of reviewing and making any recommended updates to the S&A policy. And so I'll give a brief overview of what the process needs to look like, but then we'll kind of pull it up. My thoughts on this is we'll kind of go through, make any recommendations or comments that we can this week. I'll incorporate those and share them with you all, hopefully for next week, unless we have more to look at. And then we could potentially vote on them to move them forward through the university's process. There's a few key things that we already have to update, like verbiage and titles of some things. But then there's 2 specific policies we've talked about in fall quarter that would be permanent changes to go into. And so, again, as a reminder, the process would really look at the committee reviews the policy. We make recommended updates to it. Once we have voted and finalized on our recommendations, then it goes through the university's process. And so 2 things happen. One is Nick shares with ASCWU, here's what we're working on. There should be nothing too crazy in all of this. But then it also goes up to both the Vice President of Student Engagement and Success, because that's where the policy lives, is under that division, as well as to the Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Officer, who both of them have committees who have the ability to review if there's concerns or pushback. Either one of those units can send it back to S&A for you all to look at and review. And then either you all can agree with their changes or we go to dispute resolution. I don't anticipate any of this will happen. Likely they will review and approve it, and then it goes up to the university's executive leadership team and the UPAC, University Policy Advisory Committee, who puts it out for the whole university community, any comments, feedback. Then it gets approved and then it gets submitted to the Board of Trustees for final approval. So I mean, there's multiple steps. The idea for this is that these recommended edits and updates will all go through that process and be approved by the Board of Trustees, likely by their summer meeting. So that way this policy will be new and in effect for next year. So number of steps, but really our part is going through the policy itself to make any recommended updates, edits, changes. And so for the sake of our committee and the recording, I'm going to share my screen and I'll pull up the policy for folks. But again, the link is in there. I'm just putting this on here, making some notes and track changes. And so let's hope I shared the right screen if it ever goes through. Are you all seeing the policy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good.
This is that same document that, yeah, it is. Okay.
It might be slightly different formatted only because this formatting is the one we have to use to send up to the university. So this is where I have to do the track changes in it. So you're going to see on there, like the one that's automatically have to do is we have to update the title of Dean of Student Success is now the Vice President of Student Engagement and Success. So I already made that change throughout the entire document. That's the only automatic change that we have. There are 3 pieces that I will bring up for discussion specifically for us. But then as we go through, if there's any others that any of you have, I want to give the chance to touch base on it. We can either make the edits here or make comments on the side. Like I said, I'll take all the feedback we have this week, make edits and send it out to you all before next week's meeting as well. So with that, I'm going to kind of walk through. And so this is kind of open. So please jump in if there's any pieces. This is more of an open discussion. Normally this would be done by a subcommittee. And when I shared this last week, but given that we don't have 9 to 13 students on here, there's only 4 of you. Doesn't make sense
Right.
a subcommittee since that's usually the size of the subcommittee. So we're just going to do it as this meeting. So one of the things I did want to bring up, and I don't have an opinion on this, but this is probably more for Nick to start off with, but also for others. If you look on here, so again, the first part is just the preamble, just so you all know, talks about guidelines are established by the Board of Trustees, touches on the different RCWs. Intent is for strong student voice in the recommendations that are put forward. I wouldn't recommend we make any changes to this whole first preamble up here at the top. because it's pretty set and mentions the actual RCWs. The part I put in here, if you all look at, and some of this is a refresher to our training back in fall when we went through this document. The committee, it talks about this, the committee itself is made up of 9 to 13 voting members. I highlighted that because that was something that was made as an update when we reviewed this last time. Just so you all know, the reason that was is we used to have 9 student members and we had 13 total voting members, 3 that were faculty appointed positions and 1 that was an administrative appointed position. The faculty and administrative ones got removed, but the decision from the committee, they couldn't decide if they wanted it to consist of 9 or 13. I would recommend to you all the language saying consisting of 9 to 13 voting members is kind of vague and confusing. I would rather and recommend you all pick to consist of up to 9 voting members or up to 13 voting members. Really what it does is it gives us the cap of we can't have more than that on the committee within it. But again, I don't know if people have a strong sense or preference on that. Xander?
Oh, I'm not unmuted, or anyway, would it be unreasonable to have the verbiage be like a minimum of 3 but no more than 13 or something like that, just so that we have a minimum?
You all can absolutely do that. I would say probably I would aim for maybe if we can do a minimum of more than 3, because as you all can even see here, with 3, you have a chair, someone has to motion in second, and that's all of the committee members.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now, it doesn't mean the other part for you all to know as we talk about like meetings for quorum, we have to have a majority of the members present to be quorum. So if your committee is made up of 5 students, we don't count as the ex officio folks. You have to have at least 3 people present. And so like a committee of 3, you couldn't really still proceed if you only had 2. So, but I do like your idea of having a minimum because it makes it very clear we have to have X number on there. So do people have thoughts, opinions, preference on this?
I like the minimum, maybe something larger, maybe like 7 or 5.
How
It's
does
definitely
6 sound?
yeah,
Now, I will say this, keep in mind, right now we have a committee that we only have the ability right now of 4 members. So I would maybe have Nick check, like, I like the idea of having a 5 to, whether you say 9 or 5 to 13 voting members, a minimum of 5, but no up to 13. But keep in mind that also puts the requirement of we can't officially proceed even if we don't have quorum unless we have that minimum. Which would mean if you all said 5 and the 5 was the policy, we wouldn't be able to even have unofficial meetings until we had 5 members.
which is difficult sometimes.
Yeah. Nick can maybe touch on that as the person trying to get people for committees.
Yeah, I think it would make it very difficult if you do put a minimum. I do realize the benefit of also putting a minimum as well, so we have consistently that number. But if we don't have consistently, say like 5 members and we lose a member throughout the year, that would make it difficult to meet and get things moving along.
Fair.
Yes, so yeah, I think that's my only caveat to putting a minimum number.
Okay, then I think we just say maybe, because I apologize, quorum is a flat rate, right? So there needs to be at least 3 people, it's not a percentage of the people in the committee. Am I correct or incorrect?
The majority of the committees, Xander. So however many people we have appointed, we have to have a majority present to meet quorum.
Okay. Then that's difficult.
And so the what the quorum is honestly depends on, like, again, if we have 9 members appointed, we have to have at least 5. if we had like this year where we only had 6 or 7 at the beginning, I think it was 7, we had to have 4 present to be able to proceed.
I guess maybe don't add a minimum, I suppose.
But
Or
we
like
did
it,
want to get rid of the 9 to 13. Do we want to like? I mean, I do agree with what Joey was saying. Of 9 to 13's a little wishy-washy sounding.
Because this makes it sound like, and it's not the intent, but it makes it sound like the committee has to be between 9 and 13, which was not the case. So,
Joey,
oh no, go ahead.
why don't we oh sorry.
Oh, you're good. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Why don't we shoot for the stars and say 13?
Are you comfortable if I say shall consist of up to 13 voting members?
Yep.
Yeah, that works good.
What do you think though, Nick?
Yeah, I agree. I was just wondering why specifically in the past it was 13.
Because we had 9 student members,
Yes.
3 faculty, and 1. So there were 13 already. When we eliminated the others, the question is, do we want to just make it 9 or do we want to bump it to 13 students? And they couldn't decide, so that's what was voted on as the update, was
Okay.
9 to 13. So right now, I mean, what we're talking about is committee shall consist of up to 13 voting members, which includes student government. Okay, I like it. These other parts, and if you all have anything, tell me, but otherwise I'm going to kind of go through each part. So stop me on anything. Also, this is not a one and done. So if you all think of any edits later on before next week, send them to me via email, and I'll either put the comments or things in so we can discuss them next week. But the ex officio members are really my role and Aaron's role. Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
On number 2, it looks like you put Vice President of Student Engagement Success twice.
Oh yeah, it did pop in there twice.
And
This
on
is what
number
happens when
3,
I do auto.
and on number B.
Oh yeah.
Done it multiple times. Yeah. This is what happens when I start doing it, and this is 100% what happened. I was like, oh, I'm just going to do this to where it will auto find all of these for me, which then
Oh, I was like, that was like you got interrupted, and
I
then
had done it to the first 3, and I was like, I know it's multiple in this paper, so I'm just going to go get rid of all of them. So the ones I did individually are duplicated. Lovely. Okay. So student members, this just talks about all committee voting shall be students, one being Nick's role. They're recommended by student government, appointed by vice president. Nick, are you comfortable with it, or do you want us to change it where it just says ACW student government as the title through here in CWSG? I know that's the broad overarching, rather than just saying exec board or anything.
Yeah, we could definitely change it to just the ACW student government.
Okay. So students will serve 1 year. This part is mostly the goal that Nick works towards. Student members should represent the diversity of student body, its varied interests. Student government's responsible for making every effort to ensure there should be student representation from all the colleges, non-traditional students who reside on, representation from the center. So that is the goal. This was a big talking point last time too, of the question of, do we make it a requirement that there are those positions, or broadly? So I'll bring it up here. The decision before was keep it as that is the goal and intent, because the previous executive vice president said if we do it as a requirement, that makes it even harder to find people to fill the positions. So if you all have thoughts or changes on, again, it's broadly that it should represent the diversity, make every effort to ensure, but it keeps it open-ended. Have to be in good academic standing. Preferred qualifications, again, things that Nick gets to look for. Should have general knowledge or ability to understand policies, procedures, budgets. Mentions he can interview them. Make every attempt to nominate, recommend by the end of spring quarter, but should be appointed no later than the 3rd week of classes fall quarter so we can start meeting. This is one that we put in here. I would not recommend we change it, but I do need to did the duplicate of the VP again. Did add in a few years ago the ability for a summer, because as you all know, you start in fall, you end by there, but the ability for student appointments in the summer. So if there is need, and sometimes it does come up, last couple of years it has for one or two needs, that student government has the ability to nominate or recommend a temporary group of student members just to hear requests. And it's generally because there's requests that come up. And so that's that part there. Question on these next pieces. So faculty members. This does include, and faculty senate has not appointed, and so I was waiting until we had this conversation to follow up for next year. We do have 3 non-voting committee appointments that are intended to be appointed by faculty senate. One person served their term and faculty senate didn't end up filling it, couldn't find anyone. The other 2 ended up having to step out before their terms ended because other things had come up. So I'm trying to remember, because was Sean on last year? Yeah. So those of you who were on the committee last year know we had a faculty member, but they stepped into a new role. So I would keep this and follow up with faculty senate, although I'm mentioning this because those of you who are new to the committee would have no clue about this because we haven't had a faculty member all year, but we do have 3 faculty positions within that. So that's something we can talk about or look at, but theirs are set by faculty senate through the faculty senate process and are 4-year appointments. They're supposed to be staggered, so they don't all come in or leave at the same time.
Yeah, I found having a faculty member on the committee very, very helpful.
I'm going to leave it unless someone says. The committee officers, again, if there's anything, and these are the chair, vice chair, and parliamentarian. If there's any discussion, thoughts on it, adjusting that, let me know. Committee advisor, very briefly, will serve as advisor to the committee. Our committee meetings, the first 2 meetings are training meetings. Members of student government are encouraged to attend these. I don't put this in there unless they are ended up being the emergency summer committee, because then they got the training meeting. Regular meetings scheduled throughout during regular academic year. And so a place to be established by the committee, its first meeting. So just so you know, and if you all remember from the fall, we usually schedule it in the past. The meetings were always Wednesdays at 5 or 5:30. We'll typically start the year with that's the first meeting and then establish when we want our regular meetings to be. But as you all know, when we did it tonight, we have the ability to move it. We just have to give advance notice out to folks and update the website and other things. So public comment. You already all know that. We do it every week. Committee members must be in attendance to vote. We cannot change any of that, so I wouldn't even entertain it. Conflicts of interest. Attendance, so committee members are expected to attend all meetings and provide prior notice if they're unable to. Removal if members are not attending and not providing notice. Those are all pretty general. And no one has said anything, so I'm going to keep moving through this. So budget procedures. There's going to be 2 spots that come up a little bit later on, and then this is where we talked about in the fall, potentially making some permanent changes to the policy. So budget information, again, student funds. So Aaron's position provides us with the needed information. Provide information to the community in a timely manner. Talks about the funding priority. So again, the committee must give priority consideration to, in this order, pre-existing contractual obligations, debts already incurred, legal obligations, contracted agreements recognized and approved by the committee, student union and rec center, and support costs for those, and the stability for programs affecting students. I would not recommend making any changes to those funding priorities because some of those are pretty set. Like we can't ignore a pre-existing contractual obligation. That kind of is #1 priority legally. Does talk about budget proposals. We accept them from previous funding recipients as well as new proposals. Give first priority obligation to those referenced in that first section. So that's more the large part. CERC reservation fund, reserve fund. Talked about the reserve fund, need to have a minimum balance of 500,000 as emergency on that. I mean, unless you have any recommendation, Aaron, that we need to adjust that number, great. Talks about the fees themselves. Fees are established by the Board of Trustees. This is a fun one. Pursuant to this, they can be increased annually by a percentage, not to exceed the annual percentage increase in tuition. So that actually got decoupled. Now I don't remember how long ago. So we can still keep this in here if we really want to, but I'm going to highlight this as one. It doesn't really have an impact on things, but what this would mean is, because the Board of Trustees can follow and do kind of what they want, we wouldn't be able to recommend a fee increase up that's more than tuition. Not that I think we would, but I think we should. I'll take a look at what the current RCW on this says and maybe adjust the language to match it, just so we're in agreement. Talks about the process for changing fees, timeline for approval of fee changes. Again, we can't really change any of those. Base funding procedures, this comes up this next year. So this will all be starting. So when we talk about solicitation of funding requests, no later than October 1st, which will be this coming October 1st, the committee will publicize the timeline for considering proposals. So I'll go through the whole thing on here to show you all, but some of this is kind of set by our system and quarters. So I wouldn't recommend changes, but that's only having lived through it. Doesn't mean we can't adjust. This really means that Aaron and me and I have to make sure by October 1st of this year, we have publicized out on the website, sent notice out to the current base funded groups, and put out information in the Observer, which is somewhere in here. Oh yeah, right here, published in the first issue of the university's newspaper, saying base funding process is coming, it is open, and the timeline, as you go to the next one, submissions for funding requests have to be submitted no later than December 1st of this year. The part for you all is those come in December 1st. Those have to be vetted and reviewed by Aaron and myself to make sure they actually meet what is allowable or not. And then you all hear all of those, that committee review all starts happening winter quarter. So they come in, they have 10 minutes for each presentation, followed by 10 minutes of questions. You can recall presenters if needed. But you all have to have your full committee recommendation on the full base funding no later than the last week of March. That goes to student government for review as well as to the CW administration, so to the CFO. They get a chance to review it. They can provide written response, either saying, yes, we're in support, or no, we're not in support. Those have to come back to the committee no later than the last week of April. Oh, and this didn't get changed. Oh, I don't have track changes on. Hold on. It comes back for you all. If there's disputes, it all goes through that. Otherwise, if it's all in agreement, it goes to the Board of Trustees for review, which ideally is their spring meeting. So by May, they've reviewed and approved because those budgets go into effect July 1st. During each year of the funding, you all evaluate the impact of inflation, things like that. That's stuff that Aaron and I bring if there needs to be changes or adjustments, as we've talked about. Supplemental funding, and this was changed last time, that groups and organizations who receive S&A funding, the base funding are expected to operate within that. However, as circumstances may arise that's outside of what was planned or other opportunities, those base funded units can come in and request supplemental funding from you all. So it talks about a little bit of the criteria for that, what's first priorities of how we review it. Base funding increases that can happen, the process, how talks about, again, the reserve fund can't still go below that. What the submission of supplemental requests looks like, Aaron's job in reviewing those before they come in, your all's job in reviewing them, then it goes up. So all stuff we've done. So most of this, no one has said anything, so I'm assuming we're good with keeping most of this. The fund management is where we have the 2 potential updates that we talked about, which I'll get to in a sec. So fund management, again, we talked about that. Fund transfers, these are all things on Aaron's end. So unless Aaron has recommended updates to those, I would keep them where they are. The part for us, and Aaron, you can still say it, but this one section here where it says under expenditures. This is one we talked about. And so as you all may remember, we put in place as a one-time last year and a one-time this year. We talked about reviewing it. So this currently says unused S&A allocations may be carried forward from one academic year to the next, but may not be carried forward beyond the 4th year of the funding cycle. Exceptions may be approved by the committee, but only in advance for good cause. What we have put in place the last 2 years, and my recommendation to you all would be updating under expenditures. So unused S&A fund allocations may not be carried forward at the end of the fiscal year and will be swept back to the S&A general fund. I see nodding. So I'm going to make that wording.
I think, are we going to keep the part about exceptions may be approved by the?
I think we should.
Yeah.
Yep. I think it's helpful to have it in there because people can come in and request. I think what come up for you all is if someone comes in and is like, hey, I'm going to have this unspent balance. Can I please keep it? You all would really look at, well, does it make sense for you to keep it? Or is it like, no, but you can request supplemental next year? Like, I think some of it may depend on the timing of when they need, like, hey, I need this, it's going to hit my budget in July, it's going to hit next year, but type scenario. So may not be carried forward. I'll just say that will not be carried forward at the end of the fiscal year. Is that accurate, Aaron? I don't need to say it's going to be swept back, right? Just may not be carried forward at the
end. I think that's fine.
Applicated. Okay. Unexpended salary. This is the other one. The current policy is if S&A funds are allocated to fund a staff position, the position remains vacant for 6 consecutive months. Any salary savings will revert to the S&A committee for reallocation. We have put in place the last 2 years, if the position remains vacant for 1 month, any salary savings resulting will revert back. So I think that's the other one I would recommend, is updating in here permanently, because that is consistent with our other funding pieces, right, Aaron? Yeah. Any opposition to me putting that? I know we're not voting on it right now, but I want to make sure. Okay. Position remains vacant for 1 month. I don't know on this one, Aaron, from your take, we haven't had a ton of supplemental, but unused supplemental, approved supplemental funds that are not expended within 60 days of the original expenditure date, unless an account may be called back. I mean, that seems to make sense. I don't know if we've had any issues you've come across, but it's pretty much, they ask for money, we want to use it for May 30th. Now it's 60 days after May 30th and the money hasn't been expended. It may be called back for review by the committee.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense because, if thinking like if you all have a certain amount that you're allowed to distribute out and you give money out or you authorize it and it's not spent, then you might want them to either come back and say, are you going to spend it? At least a follow-up, because then if they, either yes, I need an extension, or no, and then you all have that opportunity to allocate it out to a different area. So I think that's good to keep in there.
Perfect. That's kind of what I was thinking, but I guess I wouldn't know if there were issues that were arising with that. Zach lives in-
Yeah. I think I need to double check.
Annual reports, you all know this very well after last quarter. It just has, and again, it's built in the policy. Those are due December 1st. Here are the things those annual reports should describe. We never have to use this, but it always has failure to submit the required annual reports may result in denial of further funding. Fortunately, that doesn't come up often, but it's one of those things that's like, hey, if you don't submit it, that means next year you may not get your funding. So please just submit your report. Committee review, responsibility of you all, priorities, funding levels, public information. We have to put stuff out, and this is on Aaron's side of things primarily. If you all look at our website, but we have to, pertaining to the fee budgets, we have to provide that out in general, anyone interested, but also by September 30th, we have to post our S&A expenditure information for the prior year. For essentially, this is a state kind of requirement that we have to put out there. So the next section is dispute resolution. This again, hopefully we never have to deal with, but I would also recommend we don't really make any changes to. This is if you all say we think we need to fund this or not fund this, like we're going to defund something, and the university administration comes back and says, no, we don't agree with you, we recommend you change it, and you all say, no, we're sticking with our original recommendation, they can't just veto you. It has to go through this process of a dispute resolution, where there's a committee that gets pulled together to look at, review the pieces on there, and then provide a recommendation to the Board of Trustees. We, in my time with the committee, have not had to use the dispute resolution. However, right before I came on board, the last time we did have to go to dispute resolution, and that involved the S&A fees and the university's administrative fee. So fun times that hopefully we never have to use. Ideally, in my mind, if Aaron and I are doing a good job of advising you all, you should know where there might be concerns before they ever get to anyone up there. So it shouldn't come back.
Hopefully.
And again, more procedural things, fund transfer disputes. And this last one is, again, just the process of what we're going through right now. So for making changes, how we go about it. Again, we're not doing a subcommittee right now because we don't need to. So we're reviewing it by the committee, not a subcommittee. Consisting of at least 3 members. There are 3 of you who are here. But again, it's the full. So with that, that's kind of the end of it. I mean, were there any pieces anyone had other recommendations or pieces to review or update from what you all saw? Cool.
No.
I'm going to stop sharing. So if there are, I'm going to save these notes, and I don't think there's anything, because I think I made the actual grammatical changes right as we were going. I'm looking back through. Oh, there's the one I was going to look back at the RCW. So I'll double check that to make sure that language. But if there are any thoughts, feedback any of you all have between now and next week, send them to me via email. And I'll either put the note in for the committee to see or make the slight tweak if it's a straightforward part for that. And for Jared, since Jared's not here, if Jared has any other feedback or thoughts, I can incorporate those. But I'll try and get all of the edits and pieces ready for next week, so they're all in there. If we have others, we can put it. Otherwise, if it looks like it's at a good spot, you all can vote to move it forward through the process. But if anything else, let me know. Or if you have questions, as mentally sometimes we process internally. If you think of it as soon as we hop off, don't hesitate to reach out. Otherwise, I will turn it back over to you, Xander.
Alrighty, thank you. So we have no more old business. Let's move on to our second call for public comment. Okay, seeing none, let's move on to adjournment. Do we have to vote for that? Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to adjourn. This
All right.
excellent.
Second? Yeah, let's vote. Wait, I don't vote. Okay, cool. So unanimous, our meeting is adjourned. Yippee.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful weekend, and see you all next Friday.
Bye.
Except Mia will not be here. We will miss Mia next week. But
Oh.
she can watch our recording later on.
I'm
so.
gonna watch it, I promise. I have to.
Have a wonderful weekend all. Bye.
Bye.